or cheap.
Is it accurate?
Let's just say if I weighed a 25-pound bag of flour on it, and the scale said it weighed 24, I'd go back to Hannaford's and demand a refund. You should take off your boots if you want something close to a true weight. And why did you bring your coat?
You'll see. Scott didn't take off his boots, but put the parka on instead, to the tune of more jingling from the pockets. Now not just fully dressed, but dressed for the outside on a day much colder than this one, he stepped on the scale. Let her rip. In order to allow for the boots and the coat, Bob ran the counterweight all the way to 250, then worked backward, first sliding the weight, then nudging it along. The needle of the balance bar remained grounded at 240 and 230 and 220, which Dr. Bob would have thought impossible. Never mind the coat and boots, Scott Carey simply looked heavier than that. He could have been off in his estimate by a few pounds, but he had weighed too many overweight men and women to be this far off. The bar balanced at 212 pounds.
I'll be dipped in pitch, Dr. Bob said. I need to have this thing recalibrated.
Don't think so, Scott said. He stepped off the scale and put his hands in his coat pockets. From each he took a fistful of quarters. Been saving these in an antique chamber pot for years. By the time Nora left, it was almost full. I must have 5 pounds of metal in each pocket, maybe more. Ellis said nothing. He was speechless. Now do you see why I didn't want to go to Dr. Adams? Scott let the coins slide back into his coat pockets with another jolly jingle. Ellis found his voice.
Let me be sure I have this right. You're getting the same weight at home?
To the pound. My scale's an Ozeri step-on, maybe not as good as this baby, but I've tested it, and it's accurate. Now, watch this. I usually like a little bump and grind music when I strip, but since we've undressed together in the club locker room, I guess I can do without it. Scott took off his parka and hung it on the back of a chair. Then, balancing with first one hand and then the other on Dr. Bob's desk, he took off his boots. Next came the flannel shirt. He unbuckled his belt, stepped out of his jeans, and stood there in his boxers, T-shirt, and socks. I could chuck these as well, he said, but I think I've taken off enough to make the point. Because, see, this is what scared me. The thing about the clothes. It's why I wanted to talk to a friend who could keep his mouth shut instead of my regular doc. He pointed to the clothes and boots on the floor, then at the parka with its sagging pockets. How much would you say all that stuff weighs?
With the coins? At least 14 pounds, possibly as much as 18. Do you want to weigh them?
No, Scott said. He got back on the scale. There was no need to move the weights. The beam balanced at 212 pounds. Scott dressed, and they went back to the living room. Dr. Bob poured them each a tiny knock of Woodford Reserve, and although it was only 10 in the morning, Scott did not refuse. He took his down in a single swallow, and the whiskey lit a comforting fire in his stomach. Ellis took 2 delicate birdie sips, as if testing the quality, then tossed off the rest.
It's impossible, you know,
he said as he put the empty glass on an end table. Scott nodded. Another reason I didn't want to talk to Dr. Adams.
Because it would be in the system, Ellis said, a matter of record. And yes, he'd have insisted you undergo tests in order to find out exactly what's going on with you.
Although he didn't say so, Scott thought insisted was too mild. In Dr. Adams's consulting room, the phrase that had popped into his head was taken into custody. That was when he decided to keep his mouth shut and talk to his retired medical friend instead.
You look 240, Ellis said. Is that how you feel?
Not exactly. I felt a little, ploddy when I actually did weigh 240. I guess that's not a real word, but it's the best I can do.
I think it's a good word, Ellis said, whether it's in the dictionary or not.
It wasn't just being overweight, although I knew I was. It was that, and age, and...
The divorce?
Ellis asked it gently, in his most